Can somebody here give me work? She didn't shout it. She didn't ask at the door. She walked all the way to the middle of the garage, past the lift with the Dyna on it, and past the guy crouched under the Heritage Softail. And she stood under the fluorescent light where everyone could see her, and she said it flat, like a fact she was presenting rather than a favor she was requesting. Her lip was split at the corner. Her jacket was soaked through. One of those men's canvas barn coats, 2 sizes too big, the kind you grabbed off a peg because it was the closest thing to the door. Her boots were dark with water. She was carrying a backpack with one strap held together by a carabiner clip, and she was holding herself the way people hold themselves when they've been walking a long time, and they've decided they are not going to let you see how tired they are. She was 24 years old. She looked younger than that and older than that at the same time. Clem Varga saw her first. He was at the parts bench near the side door, sorting a carburetor kit that someone had put back in the wrong box, and he looked up when she came in because he always looked up when something changed in the room. A habit from his army years that he'd never quite managed to quit. He watched her cross the floor. He watched her stop under the light. He watched her say the things she said. Then he set down the carburetor parts carefully and walked over. "You talking to me," he said. "I'm talking to whoever decides," she said. Clem, the club called him Fig, a name he'd earned through a story he told only once and never again, looked at her for a moment. Then he turned toward the back of the garage and raised his voice just enough. "Rise." Reese McKay came out of the office the way he did everything, without hurrying. He was 54 years old with a gray beard he kept short and 2 sleeves of ink that had started out as separate pieces and turned into something unified over decades. He had been the president of the Northern Shields Motorcycle Club for 11 years, and before that he had been on the road, and before that he had been other things in other places that he did not discuss unless asked directly, and sometimes not even then. He looked at the young woman, standing under the light. He took in the split lip, the barn coat, the wet boots, the way she was standing, chin level, shoulders back, which would have read as defiance on someone who wanted a fight, but on her read as something else entirely. Someone holding themselves together the way you held a cracked thing, carefully, with both hands, hoping the pressure would be enough until you found somewhere to set it down. "What kind of work?" he said. "Mechanical," she said. "Whatever you need. Oil changes, diagnostics, engine work. I've been doing it since I was 12. I'm not asking for a wage up front. I'm asking for a chance to show you I'm worth one." One of the guys across the shop made a low sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Reese didn't look at him. He kept looking at her. "What's your name?" "Willa Harte." "Where are you coming from, Willa?" She paused. Just half a second, the way people pause when they've decided in advance which version of the truth they're going to give. "West of here, I've been moving around." "How long have you been in Coldmere?" "About a week. I was at the shelter on Drummond, but they're at capacity, and I've been to 3 places today that didn't work out." She said it without apology. "Just information. I saw your lights on." Reese looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "You hungry?" She opened her mouth, closed it, said yes. "Clem, get her something." Clem went. Reese pulled a stool from near the tool bench and set it in front of her. "Sit down," he said. "I'm not making a decision tonight, but you're not going back out in that." He nodded toward the door, where the November rain was coming down, hard enough to hear it drumming on the metal roof. She sat. She kept her back straight and her eyes moving, taking in the shop the way someone took in a room when they'd learned from experience that rooms could change on you if you stopped paying attention. Clem came back with a paper plate, 2 sandwiches and a bag of chips, and a coffee in a heavy mug. He set them on the bench beside her without ceremony. "Thank you," she said. "Don't," he said. "Nothing's decided yet." She picked up a sandwich and ate it with the careful steadiness of someone very hungry who had decided a long time ago that showing hunger gave people the wrong kind of power over you. Reese pulled up a stool a few feet away and sat down, arms crossed, and watched her for a moment. "Tell me something," he said. "What makes you think you belong in a motorcycle shop?" She looked up at him. "That Electroglide on the far left," she said. He glanced toward it. "What about it?" "The frame tube near the lower engine mount. Hairline crack on the right side. You can see it if the light hits at the right angle. Whoever's riding that shouldn't be riding it." The garage went quiet. A man named Patton Sark to everyone in the club, a name that had nothing to do with his actual personality and everything to do with an incident involving a propane burner that nobody fully agreed on, set down his impact wrench and walked to the lift. He crouched. He angled his head. He stood back up. He looked at Reese. "She's right," he said. The quiet in the garage changed quality then. The kind of quiet that is actually a form of listening. Reese looked at Willa. "You got that in 30 seconds, he said. "The light was good," she said, "and I was looking." Something shifted in his face, not a smile exactly, something more like recognition. There was a room off the back used for storage, cots for road trips, a space heater, shelves of parts that hadn't been sorted in a while. Reese told her she could stay there that night. She didn't argue. She didn't thank him. She said okay, and she meant it with a completeness that told him she was someone who didn't waste words. She fell asleep before the last of the bikes were done for the night. What she didn't know was that after the shop went quiet, Reese sat at the table in the back room with a glass of rye he wasn't drinking, and Fig and Sark sat across from him, and they talked about her the way the club talked about things that needed to be talked about, directly and without performing. She's running, Fig said. It wasn't a question. Obviously, Sark said. From what? Fig asked. That's the thing, Reese said. He turned the glass in his hand. He had a specific instinct for the difference between people who were running from something they'd done and people who were running from something done to them. The first kind watched the exits. The second kind watched the people. Willa Harte had been watching the people from the moment she came through the door. We don't know enough yet, Reese said. So we give her tonight and see what morning shows us. What morning showed them was this. Willa had been up since 4:30. She had found a broom in the storage room and swept the entire front bay. She had organized the parts shelf by the service counter into a system so logical that Sark, who had been working around that shelf for 3 years, stood in front of it for 45 seconds trying to figure out if he was imagining it. She had written out a full inspection note on the Electroglide, 3 pages, handwritten in small, precise lettering with a diagram, and left it on the desk with a pen resting across it. When Reese came in at 6, she was in the bay with her jacket off, examining the underside of a client's truck that had come in the day before. You do trucks too, he said. I do anything with an engine, she said. And she said it not as a boast but as a simple statement of fact, the way she said everything. He read the Electroglide inspection note twice. Then he went to the bay and said, You're working here. She didn't smile, but something in the set of her face changed. Something that had been held at a very particular tension for what looked like a long time let go, just slightly. What are the terms? She said. You earn what you do, he said, same as everyone else. That's fair, she said, and she went back to the truck. The first 2 weeks moved the way good work weeks move, fast in the body, slow in the memory. Willa learned the shop and she learned its rhythms. She learned that Fig was the first one in every morning, and the one most likely to have already noticed a problem before you pointed it out. She learned that Sark talked constantly while he worked, but went completely silent when he was doing something difficult, which was how you knew the difficult part had started. She learned that the youngest full-time guy, 28-year-old Brody Lusk, had a nervous laugh and the steadiest hands in the shop. She filed every observation and she used them, the way someone uses a map, not to show off that they have one, but to move through the territory without getting lost. On the 10th day, she fixed a billing discrepancy she'd noticed in the intake records. An older client had been overcharged twice on labor, not through dishonesty, just a miscommunication between Sark's estimates and Fig's invoicing that had been compounding quietly for months. She flagged it in a note on Reese's desk and left a draft correction letter beside it. Reese came to find her at the end of the day. How did you catch that? He said. The rate code didn't match the service codes in the file, she said. It's been off since February. The clients are owed credits, he said. I know, the letters are drafted. You just need to sign them. He looked at her for a moment with the particular expression of someone revising an estimate they'd already made upward. Then he said, sign them, and walked away. It was Fig who noticed the car first. A navy blue sedan, Ontario plates but not local. He was sure of that, because Fig had spent enough years tracking things from a distance to know the difference between a car that belonged somewhere and a car that was watching something. It had been parked on the street outside the shop twice in 4 days. Different spots each time, but always with a sight line to the front bay. He told Reese on a Thursday afternoon. Reese told him to watch and say nothing to Willa yet. That evening, Reese called a man named Aldous Kipp, who was not affiliated with the club in any formal way, but who had been a careful source of information for going on 15 years, ever since an incident with a municipality that Aldous had helped resolve without it becoming something worse. I need a quiet read, Reese said. Name Willa Harte, 24 years old. Came into Coldmere from somewhere west, probably past the salt. Someone's watching my shop on her account and I want to know who before they get bolder. Give me 24 hours, Aldous said. It took 14. Aldous called back at 11:40 at night, and Reese took the call sitting up at his kitchen table because he hadn't been sleeping anyway. Willa Harte is her mother's name, Aldous said. Her legal name is Willa Deacon. Father was Grant Deacon. He ran an independent auto shop in West Haven, about 210 kilometers west of you. Grant died 18 months ago. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed late, moved fast. Reese set his glass down. Grant had a business partner, Aldous continued. Man named Harlan Neal. Well-connected in West Haven. Sits on the Chamber of Commerce board, sponsors the Junior Hockey League, funded the new wing at the public library. Very good at being liked. When Grant died, the shop transferred to Neal through a partnership agreement. Willa contested it. Said the version of the agreement that appeared after her father's death was not the document he had signed. She went to 2 lawyers in West Haven. The first stopped returning her calls after meeting with Neal's attorney. The second told her the documentation was clean, and she had no case. Reese was very still. Neal had the shop re-registered within 6 weeks of Grant's death, Aldous said. Willa left West Haven about 4 months ago. Neal's been looking for her since. The man in the sedan is a private investigator named Tulloch. He's been in Coldmere 5 days. What does Neal want with her? A pause. A man like Neal doesn't hire an investigator for a girl who just walked away. He hires one for a girl he believes has something. Reese didn't tell her that night. He told her in the morning, not everything, but enough. He sat across his desk from her and said the name Harlan Neal out loud in a room. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She sat with her hands folded on the intake folder she'd been carrying, and she looked at him with those steady gray eyes and she said, "He found me faster than I expected." "What does he think you have?" Reese asked. A long silence. The rain had come back overnight, quieter now, tapping on the office window. "My father knew something was wrong before he died," she said. "He told me Harlan had asked him to re-sign some documents when he was already very sick and the medication was heavy. My father signed because he trusted Harlan. But afterward, when he was clearer, he told me it hadn't felt right. He said he'd tried to do something about it." She stopped. "He wouldn't tell me what. He said he didn't want to put it on me until he knew it was solid." "And then he died before he could tell you," Reese said. "Yes." "What do you actually have, Willa?" "A USB drive," she said. "Photos I took of the original documents. The signatures are different, the dates are different. But 2 lawyers in West Haven said it wasn't enough." "Lawyers in West Haven who Neal knows," Reese said. She said nothing, but she held his gaze steadily. "You're not handling this by yourself," he said. She looked at the desk. "I've been handling things by myself for a while." "I know that," he said. "I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying you don't have to. Not in this building." She was quiet for a moment. Something behind her expression shifted. Not dramatically, just a fraction. Like a door that had been held shut at great effort moved slightly in its frame. "Okay," she said. What came next happened in pieces, and some of those pieces came from directions no one had anticipated. The first piece was Sark, who had gone into the old storage room to pull a box of archived invoices and come back with something else. He knocked on Reese's office door and set a manila envelope on the desk and said, "Found this behind the shelving unit. Back corner. Looked like it had been there a while." Reese opened it. Inside was a sealed plastic bag, and inside the bag was a folded document. It was a statutory declaration, signed and notarized. The date was 14 months ago, 3 months before Grant Deacon died. The name at the top was Grant Henry Deacon of West Haven, Ontario. The notary stamp was from a firm in Coldmere. Reese read it twice, then he went to find Willa. She was under a client's truck in the main bay. She heard his boots stop beside the lift, and she rolled out on the creeper. She sat up and she saw the document in his hand before he said anything. "Read it," he said. She took it. He watched her read. He watched her expression move through things that didn't have clean names, recognition, grief, something vast and breaking open, and something solid arriving at the same time. The declaration described a partnership agreement fraud in specific detail. It named Harlan Neal. It described the document Grant had believed he was signing, and the material differences from the version Neal had later produced. It named 2 witnesses who had been present when Grant signed the original. It stated, in Grant's own careful words, that he was of sound mind on the date of notarization, and that he was making this declaration because he feared he would not have time to pursue the matter himself, and wanted his daughter to have something that could stand without him. At the bottom, Grant Deacon had written, "I am leaving this in a place I trust. If you are reading this and I am not there to explain it, please know that I tried." Willa's hands were absolutely still. The document didn't shake at all. "He came here," she said. "It wasn't a question." "He must have," Reese said. "He had 3 bikes over the years we knew him." Willa looked up slowly. "He told me once there was one place in the world where he believed people kept their word," she said. "He never told me where he meant." Reese felt something tighten in his chest that he kept off his face. "He was protecting you," he said. "He didn't want you carrying this if it came to nothing. He wanted it somewhere it would be kept safe." She looked back at the declaration. She read the last line again. Then she said very quietly, "He trusted you. He put this here because he trusted you." "He did," Reese said. "And we kept it. We didn't know we had it, but we kept it." The club moved the way it moved when moving was what the situation needed. Without fanfare, and without delay. Reese called a civil litigation lawyer in Sudbury named Callum Burke, who had done 2 pieces of work for the club over the years, quiet work that had never needed to become loud. I have a statutory declaration signed before a notary, Reese said, documenting a business fraud. I have a USB drive with photographs of original documents. And I have a young woman who was present in her father's last weeks and can testify to what he told her. Who's the other party? Callum asked. Harlan Neal, West Haven. A pause. I know that name. Most people in the region do. What does he know you have? He knows she exists and that she's here. He doesn't know about the declaration. Then we move before he finds out, Callum said. Bring her in tomorrow. The drive to Sudbury the next day was just Reese and Willa in his truck. Fig had offered to drive. Sark had said he'd come along. Reese had said no. Some things were right with fewer people in the room. They were 40 minutes out when Willa said, he sent someone to follow me for 4 months. He's frightened, Reese said. He has a library wing named after him, she said. Those things aren't contradictions, Reese said. A man who builds that kind of surface is usually afraid of what's underneath it. She looked out at the November highway, flat and gray and long. My father built his shop from nothing, she said eventually. 1 bay, 1 lift when he was 29 years old, 6 days a week for 15 years. He and Harlan became partners because Harlan had capital and my father trusted him. A pause. My father was not a suspicious man. It wasn't in his nature. It's not a flaw, Reese said. No, she agreed. It's not. She kept looking at the road ahead. He chose right in the end. He found the right place to leave something. Reese kept his eyes on the highway. He chose somewhere that would still be there, he said. That's what he knew about this place. Callum Burke was methodical and unhurried and asked better questions than Willa had expected. She answered all of them. She described the conversations with her father in the last months of his life. She described the USB drive and what was on it. She described West Haven, Harlan Neal, the 2 lawyers who hadn't helped, the 4 months moving from city to city before Coldmere, and finally the November night and the garage lights on through the rain. When she was done, Callum looked at the declaration again. The notary stamp is clean, he said. I know this firm, they're solid, and the declaration is specific enough to be taken seriously. He named the witnesses, the discrepancies, the dates. He looked up. This isn't everything we'd want, but combined with the photographic record and your sworn testimony, it's a foundation. Will it get buried? Willa asked. She said it plainly, without anger. Callum looked at her. Not if we file correctly. Not if we go to the right office and make enough noise that quietly reassigning it becomes harder than handling it. Neal has reach in West Haven, but a statutory declaration filed in a civil fraud proceeding creates a record that is harder to make disappear than a conversation or an allegation. Willa nodded once. On the drive back, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, what happens if Harlan shows up at the shop? Then we deal with it, Reese said. It's not your problem, she said. You work at the shop, he said. That makes it our problem. That's how it works in that building. She looked at him for a moment. You don't know what you're walking into, she said. I know Harlan Neal is a man who stole a shop from a dying man and has been chasing his daughter across the province to keep her quiet, Reese said. That's enough. Harlan made his move 6 days later, and he made it the way men like him made moves when they had options, not in person, but through a reporter at the Coldmere Weekly. A small item ran about community concerns regarding a young transient woman living and working at the motorcycle club on the edge of town. It was careful writing. It didn't name Willa. It quoted an unnamed source expressing worry about vulnerable individuals being exploited by organizations with checkered histories. It mentioned in passing that a West Haven-based community leader had expressed concern for the young woman's welfare. Reese read it at 6 in the morning. He called Callum at 7. He's shaping the narrative before we can, Callum said. It means he knows we're moving. It also tells us we need to accelerate the filing. The filing went in that afternoon. Callum's office submitted the civil fraud claim to the provincial court alongside a request for an independent review of the West Haven shop transfer, supported by the statutory declaration, the photographic record, and Willa's sworn statement. Reese showed Willa the confirmation at the end of the workday. She read it. She set it on the desk. It's in, he said. She nodded. It doesn't end here, he said. He's going to fight it. He has money and he has people. It could take time. I know, she said, but it's moving. A pause. That's all I needed it to do. 2 weeks after the filing, the navy blue sedan disappeared from the street. Tulloch drove out of Coldmere and didn't come back. Harlan Neal's lawyers sent a letter to Callum's office proposing a settlement conference. Callum's response was 4 sentences. The settlement conference did not happen. What happened instead was slower and more procedural and less dramatic than it looked in films, which was, Willa came to understand simply how justice moved when it was actually moving and not being performed. Documents were reviewed. Depositions were taken. The two witnesses Grant had named in his declaration were located. One in West Haven and one in Timmins. Both of them, when contacted by Callum's office, confirmed what they remembered of the day they'd witnessed Grant Deacon sign. One of them said she had been waiting for someone to call. She hadn't known what for exactly, but she'd been waiting. The judgment came on a Thursday morning in late March, 8 months after Willa had walked into the Northern Shields garage in the rain. Callum called Reese at 9:15. She won, he said, simple, just the fact. Reese walked out of his office and found Willa under a Sportster in the main bay. She rolled out on the creeper when she heard his boots. She looked at his face. "Tell me," she said. He told her. She didn't cry. She didn't cheer. She sat up straight on the shop floor with her hands on her knees, and she looked at the middle distance for a long moment. Then she pressed her lips together and she said very quietly, "He left me something that worked." "He did," Reese said. "He knew he was running out of time, and he drove 210 kilometers, and he walked into this place and he trusted it to hold." Her voice was completely level and completely full at the same time. And it did. She stood up. She picked up her wrench. "I'm going to finish this bike," she said. "And then I want to call Callum and thank him." "Okay," Reese said. She went back under the Sportster. Across the bay, Fig was watching from the parts bench, arms crossed, saying nothing. Sark had come to the door of the side room. Brody Lusk was pretending to sort something at the counter and doing it very badly. Reese went back to his office and sat down and thought about Grant Deacon driving to Coldmere 14 months ago, sick and frightened and running out of time, walking into this shop because he believed it was a place that kept what it was given. He thought about what it took to be the kind of place that earned that belief. Whether it was a thing you built on purpose or a thing that accumulated, day by day, through 1,000 choices that didn't feel significant at the time. He thought, we kept it long enough, exactly the way he needed us to. The shop changed around Willa after that without ceremony, which was the right way for a thing like that to happen. Fig started saving her the specific carburetor work because he'd noticed she was faster at it. Sark began explaining his diagnostic reasoning out loud when she was nearby, not teaching exactly, more like thinking in her direction, because he'd realized she retained everything. Brody Lusk, who had tried 3 times to make coffee in a way that satisfied anyone, and failed each time, simply started asking her how she wanted it and making it that way, which was a small thing, but which said everything about how a person's presence could settle into a place. The week the judgment came in, Fig knocked on the frame of the storage room, where Willa was finishing her shift paperwork, and he leaned against the door with his arms crossed. "You're going to want to get your mechanic's certification sorted," he said, not looking directly at her. "The way you're going, you'll need it on paper." "I've been looking into the program in Sudbury," she said. "I know," he said. "Reese mentioned it." He pushed off the door frame. "Club will cover the fees." She looked up. "Don't argue," he said. "You found the crack in the Electroglide in 30 seconds on your first night. That bike belongs to the vice president. You saved him serious injury on the highway. We're covering the fees." He walked away. She looked at the paperwork in front of her for a long moment. Then she went back to it, because the paperwork still needed finishing. The last thing that happened, or not the last, because things kept happening, but the thing that stayed with Willa the way certain things stay, lodged in the memory like a sound you keep hearing, was on an ordinary morning in May. A woman walked into the garage and asked for Willa by name. She was in her 60s, with careful posture and a look on her face that said she had driven a long way to do something that had cost her something to decide to do. Her name was Harriet Saulnier. She had been a client of Grant Deacon's shop in West Haven for 9 years. She had known him. She had known when the shop transferred to Harlan Neal that something was wrong, and she had not said so because she hadn't known who would listen. She had read about the judgment online. She had found the garage. She had driven 210 kilometers. She stood in the middle of the bay in front of Willa and she said, "I should have said something sooner. I knew your father. He was a good man, and what happened to him wasn't right, and I'm sorry I wasn't braver when it would have mattered more." Willa looked at her for a long moment. "He would have told you it wasn't your fault," Willa said. "He would have meant it. He was like that." Harriet Saulnier's eyes were bright. "He talked about you," she said. "He said you were the best mechanic he'd ever trained, and he'd trained himself." A pause. "He said you'd be all right." Willa didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "He was right." She got her certification the following spring. She framed it and put it on the wall of the main bay next to the service schedule board. Reese didn't comment on it. Fig gave her a single nod, which was his version of a standing ovation. Brody Lusk made a pot of coffee on the day she put it up that was for the first time actually drinkable. The West Haven shop was returned to her through the court order in the summer. She didn't go back to run it. She hired a manager she'd met through Callum's office, and she stayed in Coldmere, in the Northern Shields garage, in the bay where her father's declaration had waited in a back corner for 14 months for someone to find it. She kept writing in the notebook she'd started the night she arrived. The same small, careful handwriting, the same habit of documenting things as they happen, the same instinct that had driven it since she was a teenager. The feeling that the things that were real needed to exist somewhere in her own words. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was just her life. Her own account in a place no one had the right to take from her. Every morning she came through that garage door, she knew what it had cost to have it be open. She knew the particular value of a place that kept its word. Her father had known it too. He had driven 210 kilometers with the knowledge that he was dying, and he had left what he had in the place he trusted most. She had walked through the same door, soaked through, on the worst night of a long winter, and she had asked for a chance. Some people find what they need by blood. Some find it by following the last piece of trust their father left behind, into a garage full of bikers on a November night in the rain, and discovering that the place was exactly what it had always been told to be. Willa Harte stayed. She was already home.